Here we discuss what connects and disconnects us. We use common sense to try to understand some of the issues behind events that take place in our lives. We believe that what connects us are almost the same things that disconnect us. We just have differences in our understanding. What you say may sound right, but may not be right to everybody. However, there's always a common ground where most of us can look at things and feel like this is the reality, this is the truth, this is what it should be. Often we fail to come together to agree, and sometimes we actually know exactly what is wrong, but for different circumstances, we refuse or we turn a blind eye to spot the truth or to stand with the truth, or we tend to stand with what benefit us, what pleases us, or what works well with us, and ignore exactly what is. And here at Andunda TREE, we discuss what is. Today, we are looking at some of the great and the worst episode that occurred during the Africa Cup of Nations of 2025 in Morocco. I will try to link this to see a little difference between what is happening in Africa, or what often happens in Africa, or where Africa still is comparing to the rest of the world, if it makes sense. I felt it was important to touch a little bit on this event. Should I start with the positive things, or should I start with the negative? What do you think? It's a question? Okay, I think the bad news first, and then hear later the good news. One of the negative events that took place was the episode of witchcraft. Witchcraft exists in every country, and people believe in it, people still practicing it. But it is practiced differently. And in the African continent, many still practicing and believe a lot in it. Although in Africa, witchcraft is often used for the wrong purposes, comparing to the way other nations use the so-called witchcraft. In another language, you may call it black magic or white magic, just depending on how you understand it. But I'm sure when I say witchcraft, you understand exactly the term that I'm using. And during Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025, this took place. But this did not start with the event of Morocco. I know it might have happened in other competitions, other leagues in Africa, but I want to point out that there was an event just before the Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025, which was the World Cup qualification, right? There was a match between Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm sure you probably remember this match. And the Democratic Republic of the Congo dominated almost the entire game. However, they did not win the game within 90 minutes. So this game went to extra time, and the Congo was able to beat Nigeria on penalties, right? So during the penalties, there was a clash between the coach of Nigeria and members of the DRC bench. The coach of Nigeria stated that when the penalties were taking place, there was a Congolese individual who kind of threw some type of water, which he said he wasn't sure whether it was water, whatever it was. I'm sure some of you have seen this event already, or this episode already. He came on the camera and accused the Congolese of using the witchcraft in the game. Think about this. This man saw this guy throwing water during the penalties and came on the camera after the match and said Congolese were using the witchcraft. And my first question when I saw this was, how did you know this is witchcraft if you are not a witch yourself? What determined the liquid in the bottle that looks like a water is witchcraft? And if Congolese were using witchcraft, why their witchcraft didn't work in a 90 minutes beat Nigeria 3-4 goals? Or why Congolese didn't use that witchcraft to qualify to the World Cup without going through all this knockout where they will have to face other teams or other nations in the world to qualify? One of the match that cost the DRC was the game between Senegal and the Congo. And in this match, Congo was beating Senegal 2-0, almost halftime. Senegal came back, Congolese player made a couple of mistakes, Senegal came strong, and the game finished, Senegal 3, Congo 2. My question is, where did Congolese witchcraft went to? Or should we say that the Senegalese also used witchcraft that was too powerful for the Congo? That's why they won that game?
Eric, coming towards the end of the game, I could see that you were a bit frustrated with maybe some of the DR Congo staff members. Could you give us an update on what happened there?
During all the penalty session, the guy of Congo did some voodoo. every time. So this is why I was a little nervous after him.
What did you see?
Yeah, something like that, you know, with the I don't know if it's a water or something like that, you know. So.
So to start from there, you can see how a grown-up individual, a professional coach who's believed by many the representative image of not just his own country, not just the country he's coaching, but also of the entire continent. What message is this manager pushing out there? And because of this story, many Nigerian fans started talking about this witchcraft, the Congolese use witchcraft, and so on. The mentality of Africans. So I wanted to start with that event because this event was a build-up of the witchcraft episode in the games during Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations, right? Don't lose sight, we are looking at some of the great and some of the terrible things that took place during Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations 2025. And then we compare this with where Africa is to the rest of the world. And I was just explaining the build-up of some of the behavior presented even just before this competition. And I was talking about the witchcraft. So during the match between Nigeria and Morocco and the final between Morocco and the Senegal in Morocco Africa Cup of Nations, what happened? As you know, keepers have towels to dry their hands as the ball slips in the hand. So they use this worldwide. It is known, but during the Nigeria match against Morocco, an official grabbed the towel that the Nigeria keeper was using and took it. The Nigeria keeper had to request another towel. And this was in this sense of thinking that the Nigerian goalkeeper was using witchcraft through the towel. You know what they say, what goes around comes around. I'm saying the Nigerian football team because it was their manager who did that, and their fans also talked about this. And because their coach or the manager represented the team, this is the reason why I'm using Nigeria, or I'm using the team rather than any individual in particular. So the Nigerian football team accused the Congolese of witchcraft. The Nigeria were then suspected of using witchcraft through their keeper who was using a towel to dry his hand, his face, and so on. You see how things are going? So then came to the final. In the final match, this was more bizarre. The Senegalese keeper brought a towel, but some of the ball boys from Morocco removed the towel. But in this event that you probably have seen circulated in the media, the Senegalese were prepared. They brought a few towels because they saw what happened during Nigerian game. The second keeper of Senegal now brought a different towel. This guy stood almost the rest left time of the game just holding a towel so that he can pass it to his colleague to dry the hands, and keeper would then return the towel to him to hold. And the reason for him standing there is because the Morocco's ball boys were still trying to take this towel away. This guy was surrounded with almost 4 or 5 Morocco's ball boys, including an official from Morocco who was chasing this guy. The shameful thing is that when you speak about ball boys, yes, they are kids, but these children get past information. The children don't just do what they are not told. They receive instruction. Your job is to catch a ball and pass it. Don't waste time. Don't do this. They're kind of like a professional boys because they are prepared in advance of what they have to do. That's the first thing. And when the boys were chasing this guy to try to take the towel, an official also started getting involved. This is an adult who is doing his job, a professional in his job, chasing an individual who just only stand there to pass a towel to his goalkeeper because there is people who are trying to take it away. That was bizarre. The worst case scenario was then a Moroccan player came and stood where the second Senegalese goalkeeper, and he also wanted to take this towel away. And you can see the images as they're showing if you have not seen them. He also wanted to grab this towel. Why? Witchcraft, right? And similarly to what I have said earlier. And this took place mostly after the Moroccan player missed the penalty that could have won Morocco the game. Then from that moment, when you really want to win, this is what I said, people started doing the wrong thing. Sportsmanhood go away. It's as if certain country or certain team don't want to lose. This was bizarre. This provides a horrible image when it comes to football in Africa. It's not good at all, because I have not seen any African nation that has qualified, got to semi-final, quarter-final, and passed beyond that in the World Cup. Because if there is witchcraft in this football, why some of these teams are not winning even the Africa Cup of Nations, right? This is all based on thought. And these are the kind of things that we have to think and remove in our mind. Is like we start in one place and we don't move forward. While other nations using witchcraft to progress, Africans use these things or think about these things just to destroy other people. That's where Africa stuck when it comes to witchcraft. We moved on. Another event that took place during the Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco that caught the eyes of the entire competition was a Congolese fan who stood for more than 400 minutes in order to pay tribute to the Congolese First Minister, Patrice Lumumba. This guy stood in every Congolese game for 90 minutes plus without moving. As you can see the image, you probably already see this. And this was wonderful. This guy became very popular. He had a lot of people following him. He said this is not something he expected. He was followed everywhere by fans trying to take pictures, trying to do this and that and that. It was amazing. And adding that, Congolese were already the most vibrant fans of the competition. They were moving, they were colorful, they were dancing. The combination was what I said, they were the fans of the competition. If the fans had trophies in this competition, Congolese fans really deserve this. And I think this is something that CAF should think about. If they want the football matches in Africa to be full, they should put something in place to be awarded to the fans. There are a lot of great work that is being done to promote football in Africa. But when you watch some of the football matches that took place, the stadiums were very empty, comparing to some games that you see for small leagues, or let's say females football leagues in other countries have many fans than a competition that is taking place on a continental level. So this is what I think, to actually find a way to recognize fans who really bring the energy to the competitions. They don't have to use this in every competition, but this can be used in Africa Cup of Nations to encourage those fans to continue being there. But we are not talking about the fans in general or the Congolese fans in general. I wanted to add this on top of what I was saying. We were talking about a man who stood for more than 90 minutes to pay tribute to Patrice Lumumba. And one of the most terrible things that took place was during the game between Algeria and the DRC. And during this game, Algeria scored just a few minutes before the end of the game. And one of the Algerian footballers went close to this guy who stood as Patrice Lumumba near where this guy was, where the Congolese fans were, and made a gesture of falling down. This was very shocking. This went viral. And not because this guy bullied the Congolese fans or the Congolese team. This became a little bit more personal because Lumumba is somebody who was killed, tortured. His body was cut in pieces and put in acid. He was brutally murdered. He's one of the people that represent Africa. And the reason for his killing by some Western powerful countries was because he was fighting for independence of his country and Africa. So for an African, the Algerian football player, to bully this kind of thing damaged the image of Algeria, not just the country, but the entire football team. Yes, the Algerian football team invited Michel Kouka at their hotel to try to ease the issue, sign a jersey, gave him whatever. Personally, I didn't think that was enough. And I think the guy went just there because he didn't want to make it look very bad. But it was very painful to see someone who's sacrificing his time to stand there to do something that you have not seen in the world. This is something that was yet to be seen in the world. His team losing. And then on top of that, there's a meaning behind the gesture this guy was doing. Lumumba is somebody who stood to defend the millions of Congolese who were being killed during colonial time. You have to remember that Congo was one of the worst colonial ever to these days. They lost more than 10 million of people brutally killed by the King of Belgium. So this guy is not just an image or a representation. He means life to the Congolese people. And the extra shocking thing was what the Algerian player did. The Algerian player apologized on social media and said he didn't know about this. He had no idea about what was behind this gesture. And I'm telling you, this guy was already popular during the entire competition. Almost everybody who was watching Morocco's AFCON Cup of Nations 2025 was already know about this guy. And the image of this guy went very viral. But instead of providing a legit apology, instead he said on social media that he had no idea about what was behind this, right? When you see an image of this guy, you would wonder, you would just ask yourself, why is this guy standing like this, right? This man was the most popular person of Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations 2025. He became even popular more than players themselves. There was not any exceptional player during Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations. They were just the same players that we are used to see. They play the game as they would often play. But this guy did something extraordinary yet to be seen, or that has not occurred. So he caught the eyes of the entire Africa and many parts of the world. But this guy came and said he didn't know why this guy was doing this, or tried to say he didn't know about Lumumba. This is a grown-up man, an African man, who don't know about one of the few heroes of Africa who are known. So many grown-up people know the story of Lumumba, not just in Congo, but in the world. And I know people said, oh, he apologized, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, he apologized because he didn't just ruin his image. He brought shame to his family, to Algerian football team, and to the country of Algeria. These are some of the things that sometimes people don't think of. He was wrong and he's supposed to make a great apology rather than what he did. So that was terrible, and we go in the history of football in Africa. Yes, you might forget that, but for many Congolese, I will tell you that was very personal than losing the game. So that was horrible, and it's not an image that we would like to see taking place again in African football, right? So we move on. Another episode that took place during Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations 2025 was the refereeing, right? As you already know, refereeing a match is always controversial. It's not easy to be a referee because you are between two teams, and both teams will try to do anything to be the winner, particularly with these footballers who have become more like babies. If you poke them, they fell on the floor, flip themselves as if something very heavy fell on them. This is making very difficult for the referee to actually referee the game. But as said, I will speak about the positive after. There were some very bad decisions that were made by some referees. Many fans or many people were arguing that CAF and the FIFA kind of like they were already promised Morocco a title. On this particular point, I'm not going to point out every decision that was made, but what I'm saying is there were a few bad decisions by some referees, and there were even events where the VAR was poor. In Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations 2025, we saw this a lot. As soon as you see the referees go to the monitor, you know the decision will go accordingly to what the VAR called the referee for in the first place. Although we have to understand that on this particular thing, yes, this is something that is happening worldwide, it's still a problem, but in Morocco AFCON Cup of Nations 2025, it was even worse. Let me mention this. There was also something that I spotted that I felt was negative, and that was when CAF and the FIFA president was trying to hand the trophy to who I believe might be the king of Morocco. I'm not sure. I didn't check this before doing this episode. This is a representative of a country, but he too kind of seems like angry. If you look at the video, it was as if he refused to take the trophy. CAF president tried to give him the trophy a few times. You can see his body language. And if he's the king, I'm not sure whether this is part of the kingdom or religion where he doesn't supposed to hand the trophy. I don't know. The image wasn't good. Many finals, even at the end, when people are handed the trophies, the atmosphere usually still great. Yes, people will be disappointed, but as a president, as a minister, as a representative of a country, you can't show these emotions where you can't even hold the trophy. I felt that was poor from this man, standard whatever position he's holding in Morocco or whoever it is, looking at the body language. I felt this wasn't great. another episode, I felt that was a bit negative. In Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025 was Senegalese players and their coaches left the pitch to protest against the penalty that was given to Morocco. However, there was already an error where Senegal scored a goal. The referee refused the goal because instead of waiting for the entire event to take place and then go to the VAR to double check, he whistled in the first place. And then when the Senegalese scored the goal, it was already too late, even though the players continued to play. So this goal was refused. For Senegal, this fell into what I said about the referees. They felt the referee was not on their side. That build-up, and you have to remember this was at the end of the game. So when Morocco was handed the penalty, there was only a minute or two left in the game. It means that the Senegalese team knew that Morocco was going to score, and once they scored, they knew it was over. The emotions took over, and Senegalese football players and their coaches left the pitch. But at the end, they actually came back on the pitch. Sadio Mane went in the changing room, spoke with the other players, and they came back. Morocco had a penalty. The Morocco player failed to score the penalty, and then Senegal managed to score a goal, and they won the Africa Cup of Nations 2025. So remember, it was during this penalty I'm talking about. The Tau episode I mentioned earlier actually escalated. It was after these guys missed the penalty, I believe. What the Senegalese team did was unprofessional. Nobody can disagree with that. But at the same time, you can see the emotion was high here. You can understand anything like this can happen, particularly with a minute or two left in the game. The final negative episode that took place in Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025, I can say, was what Morocco fans showed at the end of the competition. After they lost the final, many fans have left the stadium. But when you look at the football around the world, yes, you lose the game, but a lot of fans usually stay behind. Particularly the hosting nation, you are not just representing your team, you are representing the competition, you are representing the country. Right? You have the responsibility to represent the whole thing. You are the one who received the guest. And if you are the one who's receiving the guest, you don't leave before the guest, right? You leave when the guest leave. And I'm not saying that all Moroccan fans should have stayed after their team failed to win the competition, but I don't think they should also leave either, because even their team, their players still need them. You have to remember that even though Morocco didn't win the Africa Cup of Nations, they really wanted to win so badly. And Morocco is still number one team at the moment in Africa. Yes, some games they were not great, but even all great football teams, this happened. And you could see this was a team that fought very hard to the end. So you have to be there. If you can't be there for Senegal, the Moroccan fans should have been there to cheer for the Moroccan team, to clap for them. Because it's not like they didn't compete and they lost easily. You can do that if you are angry, your team didn't perform at all, they were very bad. Then in this sense, fans can feel very disappointed, not just for losing, but also for what their players did. Morocco fought to the end, and there can only be one winner. And that winner was Senegal, who scored one goal. Morocco didn't lose 3-4 goals, right? And I think this was the only loss that Morocco had in almost 20 games. You don't just show the support when your team is doing well. It is the opposite. When your team is not doing really well, when your team has lost, that's when your players or your team really need you as the fans. That's when you make more noise to try to encourage them. And I think that is one little thing that was missing from Morocco's fans. You might have seen different from me. That is what I spotted. They attended many of them in a great numbers. They filled their stadiums when it was Morocco's games. Even in the other games, I said I will talk about the positive later, but this is the negative that I'm talking about first. So I think that was not the best either, right? So these are some of the negative things that took place during Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025. Now let's talk about the positive, Let's look at the positive things. Well, personally, I felt this was one of the best Africa Cup of Nations that I have seen, And of course, the football in Africa is growing, the passion is growing. A lot of investment is being put in place. Expectations is high. Many countries are investing heavily. They have started fighting against some of the problems that players used to face, such as players not being paid, players being in poor hotels and things like that. And I felt this was one of the best Africa Cup of Nations ever. Had different things that made it great. The attendance was good. If you look, the location of Morocco is far from many countries in Africa, but the people attended massively, and big credit goes to Moroccan fans, because as I said, you can see a lot of Morocco fans attended the games that were not Moroccan. Even when Morocco was not playing, they attended, they supported other teams, they supported other fans. You know, it was massive. Attendance was great in some sense, even though I said it could be better because in some games you could see empty stadiums, but the atmosphere was great. And what made it great was a lot of things that took place. And yes, I have spoken about a lot of negative things here that have taken place, but this too was part of this passion. All this was because of the passion that many nations had to support, or the willingness to win the competition. So fans base was great. And one of the most greatest things that took place was the organization itself, right? If you look how the organization was, this is also one of the reasons why I said it was the best Africa Cup of Nations to ever take place. Look at the stadiums. They were amazing. You know, these are the stadiums that you think they are not just for Africa Cup of Nations. They are for the World Cup. Yes, I know Morocco is already in the preparation to host the World Cup, you know, but the stadium were amazing. I think the way the Africa Cup of Nations was also broadcast was very wonderful. This didn't just finish within the pitch, but even outside, you could see images of the fans being filmed, celebrating, dancing, fans of Morocco coming close with other fans. This was beautiful. And Morocco, CAF and the FIFA should congratulate themselves in what they did in the preparation of this competition itself. It shows how football is growing, not just worldwide, but in Africa. Yes, we know football is growing because they have even increased the number of the teams that's supposed to play in the World Cup and all that. It is this type of organization that inspire other countries to host the competition. Yes, it might put a lot of pressure on them, particularly countries that are not doing well economically, that don't have the infrastructure for people to explore, to see, because when a lot of people come to your country, they will discover the things that are not good, but they will also discover the things that are great. So in terms of the organizations, you cannot complain. This was massive. It was as if it was a World Cup. They deserve a 5-star on that one. Then you had the Africa representation, the music, you had the fashion. There were different teams representing the colors of Africa. You could feel the vibes of Africa. This was not just a type of competition where Africa trying to copy what happened in Europe, what goes on in America, what goes in Asia. But this was typical Africa competition where you could see the organization, the music, the dancing, the politics like a Lumumba, the fashion and things like that. You could see this was Africa. I was also pleased to see a lot of images of powerful people or representative of Africa in the stadium. Yes, we did not see president, but we saw celebrities, former players. It was great to see them, and the camera was showing them, and this made it wonderful. I have watched football matches, particularly Africa competitions, how they are often covered, and the camera is more focusing on the game. But within these, there were different images that were shown, the fans outside of the stadium, at the top of the stadium. You don't often see some of these things in these competitions. It was a competition that was wonderful, and I think this is something that whoever was behind should be proud of. And it would be nice to see a continuation of this. I'm hoping we see the same in the next Africa Cup of Nations. I know it's going to be hosted by 3 countries. And another great thing is passion, not just the passion from the fans, but you also saw the great passion of the players. Even the underdogs teams fought to win something or to draw. You saw Tanzania that was yet to qualify for Africa Cup of Nations for years. They came and qualified. You know, yes, they qualified very luckily because they only had had a 2-draw and qualified. It was as if it was a miracle. But when they played the host nation, which is Morocco, that appeared to be the favorite to win the competition, Tanzania played as if they were already there in the competition, as if this is a national team that has been playing this competition for years. It was very surprising. And if it wasn't for what I mentioned earlier about the penalty that they thought they had, but they didn't get it, Tanzania could have even beaten Morocco. So another wonderful thing I can say, mainly for what is happening in Africa now, is the willingness of players located in other parts of the world to play for Africa. You can see there is an increased number of many players who are switching to play for Africa nations. And this is great. This is what you want to see. When something starts doing well, yes, we always blame players for not representing their countries of origin, but many of these players want the opportunity. They want the salary. And some of these countries in Africa don't often provide this. You have seen players that don't even have good security. Football teams where players were attacked, players are not paid, players are not being well looked after by their countries and things like that. So this willingness of players wanting to play for Africa is great. Yes, some of them coming because of the disappointment they face. They are not getting in the teams in the country where they are in other continent, but football in Africa growing, and it can only grow massively with everybody coming together. Anyone who has connection with Africa, it doesn't matter if you're a Black American, Black British, when you play part to support anything that is happening in Africa, this can bring the respect not only for Africa, but for you as well, because Black, brown people, wherever you are, whether you like it or not, people see Africa in you. And if Africa has a bad image, Africa is doing very bad, then you also carry that representation in you. Well, I'm not from there. You can speak a long English, long French, or whatever accent, say how many of your grandparents were born in France, in Germany, whatever, but the world knows where a Black, brown person origin is. They know where you came from. They can actually discriminate you if you use that term. They can discriminate you, and when they see you, they know exactly where to connect you to, but that is not the topic of today. So the willingness for players to play for their countries of origin is massive, and this can only increase if the organizations are good enough, right? Facilities, salaries, and I encourage many players who are in between, who are not sure, to make sure that they are part of this transformation. Because when you look at the world, every continent or every country is trying to improve on its own. The world is in that position now where everything is not relying on one superpower. Every country trying to stand on its feet. So you have to be part of this change. That was wonderful to see many players, many international celebrities attending the competition. You saw iShow Speedy Play as a mascot. These are the publicity, the kind of things that you need in order to catch the eyes of the world, for teams to come look for players. So this was amazing. To conclude this, it was a wonderful competition, had some controversial. This is sport, is football. There's always controversial thing taking place in sport. And no nation ever hosted a competition that is perfect. There's always negative and positive things. So yes, I talked about a lot of negative things, and we spoke about them because some of these things are things that shouldn't be taking place. These are things that the other continent or the other nations have improved, have moved away from. And that's why I said that the mentality of Africans has to change. You know, there's a certain things that need to improve. Don't just copy things from other countries that you think are nice, but you hide behind. Your thinking attitude, these are some of the things that should be improved, that should be challenged. As they continue to take the nations far behind all this behavior of witchcraft accusation, witchcraft people thinking they can bring their magic or whatever, do this and that some people call voodoo or whatever. They should be measured, put in place whenever something happens. This is how other nations or other continents improved, or other countries in the world improve. Whenever something happens, straight away you improve that so that doesn't happen again. Let's say, for example, how the Senegalese team left the pitch. There should be a measure that will make sure that no team can do that again. But you don't put the measure like that and then have a poor referee or referees who will do things that will upset the teams. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all run by emotions. The same emotions that is making the referee make decisions that are wrong are the same emotions a player or the fans or the coaches have to win the game. So it is about improving all the sides. in order to make sure that football in Africa progress, And this is not just about football. It goes within what we do in our everyday thinking. When we see this kind of event, we usually just think, oh, how can he do that? No, this is based on how you make decisions in your everyday life. People think just because you are now on the pitch, you make a better decision that you don't often make at home. You look at things differently than how you often look at things. So in this sense, I can say overall, it was a great competition. It showed how massive Africa football is progressing. And if it can continue like that, it's gonna be amazing. When you were talking about 2045, who knows, you might end up seeing an African team winning the World Cup. If things progress like this, politics, money, investment put in place, it's a combination of many things, of course. The other nations in the world, they didn't just build this sport in 2-3 days at a time. No, there are many teams in Europe, in America that are still struggling in terms of investment, looking after teams and all that. It's not as if this doesn't happen somewhere else. And what I'm saying is, it's about promoting and having the willingness to make sure that things are improved. And you can do this by prioritizing the benefit of many, whether it's a country or a continent, rather than being selfish, looking at your own interests. If you are a minister of sport and you are trying to steal the money that's supposed to be invested in sport, that's not great. That is selfish and that cannot help Africa to develop. So these are the kind of things that may have to be improved. Another wonderful act that took place was, remember when I spoke about an Algeria player who did a gesture, what was seen as mocking a Congolese fan who stood for more than 90 minutes in the stadium to pay tribute to Patrice Lumumba and the Congolese fans in general, because that man was part of the supporters of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this Algerian player, after the score against the Congo, he actually did that gesture as what can be seen as mocking the man who was standing there for almost 90 minutes of the game, pay tribute to the former Congolese Premier Minister Patrice Lumumba, who was brutally killed. So in contrast to that player, when Nigeria played Algeria, the Nigeria player scored a goal. And when he scored a goal, he actually celebrated the goal by doing the gesture of what the Congolese guy was doing. The Congolese supporter, who is known by the name of Michel Kuka Boladinga. So this Nigerian player then paid tribute to what the guy was doing. So he also raised his hand and made the gesture as a way to say, we stand with the Congo, we stand with Patrice Lumumba, or we stand with you, Michel Kuka, who was doing this incredible thing. And this was wonderful as well. This also caught the eyes of the tournament, or the eyes of the competition, the eyes of Africa, the eyes of the world, for this small gesture. Look small, but with sport, all this small event matters, because one little thing can crash your entire career or can crash your own team. Because you have to know, when you crash your own team reputation, it affects the way the fans see you, It does matter. It can create a situation that you might find very difficult to overcome. So gesture like this was very welcomed and appreciated, not just by many Congolese, but by many people who thought what the Algerian player did was wrong. And to repay to that, the Nigerian player also paid tribute to that. And I personally commented on one of his posters. And when I was looking even around on Instagram, this picture was one of the most liked or commented pictures on his Instagram. I even mentioned that on his Instagram. So this was also something that was really wonderful. As this also send a message that we don't mock a team that lost. We don't mock people who are paying tribute to our heroes. You have to show sportsmanship. When the other team lose, you still have to show them respect. This is how fair play works in sport. You have to respect your opponent, particularly the losing team, because they are going through hard emotions at times. They are going through difficult moments. You as a sports person, you know well when you lose, you know how it feels like. You imagine as a player, the other team scored and come celebrate to your face. You know, a lot of players, we feel very annoyed about this. We feel very angry about this. But you have to know that the emotions of the fans are almost 100 times higher than you as a person who's on the pitch. So you have to know when you come to do this to a fan, it destroys that person, sometimes even the willingness to attend the game itself. So what the Nigerian player did was amazing and can also be placed in the book of the great things that happened during Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025. Right? Another wonderful thing I saw during Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025 was how people were discussing in the media, particularly social media. When this Nigerian player repeated the act of paying tribute to Patrice Lumumba, it was well appreciated. One of the great things I loved was that what was wrong was called for wrong. People didn't care if this was their team or this was not their country. People were saying things. Content creator were creating videos. If it was the referee that was wrong, they will talk about that referee that was wrong. So there were a lot of calls that were made. You know, it means that many people were following the competition, talked about it on social networks without slide on the team that they liked. They called what was wrong to be wrong. And within this, you can see even the fans of other teams moved from one side to the other. If it was Morocco versus Nigeria and Nigeria did wrong, the fans will move supporting Morocco. I don't know if you are somebody who was very active on social networks such as Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. You could see these posters and videos are still around. You still come across them. This move as well was great because the way people were following almost everything was amazing. People were just moving one side to the other, and what was wonderful. And what was negative, they will call it to be negative. I saw even Algerian fans, Moroccan fans, and other fans who even made videos talking about what is going on in Congo at the moment in terms of the conflict or Rwanda invasion of the DRC and all that. So this is how I've always wanted Africans or Black people to come together and call what is wrong, wrong. To speak out when is necessary with one voice. This is important and will help to change the lives of many so-called Black, brown people around the world. This doesn't often happen. You see this in other countries. Let's say, for instance, when something happened in a particular country in Europe, many politicians or many countries will condemn that. We make statement. We support citizens of those countries. If it's something to do with security, they will put a measure in place to provide the security and support needed for the people of that particular country. But in Africa, it doesn't often happen. So there is a need of a change of mentality because that's what's going to improve many things in Africa, not just the sport. So big up. I can say that was nice as well. So enough of talking. I hope that you enjoy this episode about the good and the bad that took place in Morocco Africa Cup of Nations 2025. There may be other few things that I didn't mention. I thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode. Follow us on our social networks. Depending where you are following this from. YouTube, just type Andunda TREE. Subscribe there. Make sure you share the video, comment if videos like this interest you. We're on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Just type Andunda TREE. Get in touch if you want to exchange thought with us or comment or whatever. Until next time, one love.